Welcome to Unknown Crimes, where we dive into the shadows of the unknown. I'm your host, Layla Johnson, and in today's episode, we'll unravel the chilling case of Ivan Milat, a man whose dark secrets haunted Australia's Belanglo state forest. As we explore the disturbing details of his life and the chilling crimes that earned him the title of the backpacker killer, we'll uncover the mystery behind the motives and the relentless search for justice. Ivan Milat was born on the 27th of December, 1944 at Crown Street Women's Hospital in Guildford, New South Wales. The son of Croatian emigrant and laborer Stjepan Marko Stevan Milat, 1902 to 1983, and Margaret Elizabeth Piddles Tunn, 1920 to 2001, an Australian national. Ivan was the fifth of their 14 children. The Milat family initially lived on a rural weatherboard cottage farm in Bossley Park, 36 kilometers west of Sydney, before relocating to Liverpool. By all accounts, Milat's parents were conscientious in raising, educating, and disciplining their children and sent them all to Catholic schools. However, family members described Milat's father as having a temper due to his alcoholism. Many of the 10 Milat boys were well known to local police and were used to handling knives and firearms, spending their afternoons shooting at targets in their parents' yard. Siblings recalled Milat displaying antisocial and psychopathic behavior at a young age, such as attacking animals with machetes during their childhood, leading to a stint in a residential school at age 13. By age 17, he was in a juvenile detention center for theft, and at age 19, he was involved in a shop break-in. In 1964, he was sentenced to 18 months for breaking and entering, and a month after release, he was arrested for driving a stolen car and sentenced to 2 years hard labor. In September 1967, aged 22, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for theft. On 7 April 1971, Milat abducted 2 young 18-year-old female hitchhikers near Liverpool railway station with a knife. He raped one of the hitchhikers before they stopped at a petrol station cafe, where they managed to escape. Milat was arrested later that day and was charged with 1 count of rape and 2 counts of armed robbery. While awaiting trial, he was involved in a string of robberies with some of his brothers before faking his suicide by leaving his shoes at the a.k.a. Gap, a well-known Sydney suicide site. Authorities believe that Milat then fled to Queensland and Victoria before flying to New Zealand, where he lived for 2 years. However, Milat is suspected of having returned surreptitiously using a fake passport and lived interstate to avoid detection. He was rearrested in 1974 after his mother was taken to hospital suffering from a heart attack. But the robbery and kidnap cases against him failed at trial with the help of the Milat's family lawyer, John Marsden. Milat took on a job as a truck driver in 1975, and by the time of his arrest, he had worked on and off for the Roads and Traffic Authority for 20 years. In 1977, Milat unsuccessfully attempted to rape and murder 2 women who were hitchhiking from Liverpool to Canberra, but he was never charged. Milat met 16-year-old Karen Duck in 1983, who was pregnant by his cousin. They married in 1984 and had 1 daughter of their own. However, Duck left Milat in 1987 due to domestic violence. They divorced in October 1989. At trial, she described Milat as gun-crazy, recalling him killing kangaroos on a visit to Belanglo State Forest. Milat's great-nephew, Matthew Milat, and his friend Cohen Klein, both aged 19 at the time of their sentencing, were sentenced in 2012 to 43 years and 32 years in prison, respectively, for murdering David Ochterlony on his 17th birthday in the Belanglo State Forest in November 2010. Matthew struck Ochterlony with the double-headed axe as Klein audio recorded the attack with a mobile phone. On 18 July 2005, John Marsden, Milat's former lawyer, made a deathbed statement in which he claimed that Milat had been assisted by his sister, Shirley Soare, 1946 to 2003, in the killings of the 2 British backpackers. In May 2015, Milat's brother Boris told Steve Apperin, a former homicide detective, that Milat had admitted responsibility for accidentally shooting taxi driver Neville Knight with a shotgun during an attempted robbery on 6 March 1962, when Milat was aged 17. Knight was left paralyzed from the waist down. Milat was never caught, and an innocent man, Alan Dillon, was subsequently convicted and served 5 years in prison for the crime. After conducting polygraph tests with Boris and Dillon, Apperin became convinced that Milat shot Knight. Authorities never charged Milat with the crime, although they noted similarities with the crime and the way Milat paralyzed many of his victims before they were murdered. Similarly, Superintendent Clive Small, who led the investigation into the backpacker murders, also believed that Milat was responsible for the shooting of Knight. By the time of the initial discoveries in the Belanglo State Forest, several backpackers had been reported missing. On 19 September 1992, two runners discovered a concealed corpse while orienteering in Belanglo. The following morning, police discovered a second body 30 meters, 100 feet from the first. Police quickly confirmed, via dental records, that the bodies were those of Clark and Walters. Walters had been stabbed 15 times, 4 times in the chest, once in the neck, and 9 times in the back, which would have paralyzed her. Clark had been shot 10 times in the head at the burial site, and police believe she had been used as target practice. After a thorough search of the forest, investigators ruled out the possibility of further discoveries. On 5 October 1993, a local man searching for firewood discovered bones in a particularly remote section of Belanglo. He returned with police to the scene where 2 bodies were quickly discovered and later identified as Gibson and Everest. Gibson's skeleton, found in a fetal position, showed 8 stab wounds. A large knife had cut through his upper spine, causing paralysis, and stab wounds to his back and chest would have punctured his heart and lungs. Everest had been savagely beaten. Her skull was fractured in 2 places. Her jaw was broken and there were knife marks on her forehead. She had been stabbed once in the back. The presence of Gibson's body in Belanglo puzzled investigators, as his camera had previously been discovered on 31 December 1989 and his backpack later on 13 March 1990 by the side of the road at Galston Gorge, over 120 kilometers, 75 miles to the north. On 1 November 1993, a skeleton was found in a clearing along a fire trail in Belanglo during a police sweep. It was later identified as that of Schmiedel and bore at least 8 stab wounds. 2 had severed her spine and others would have punctured her heart and lungs. Clothing found at the scene was not Schmiedel's, but matched that of another missing backpacker, Habschied. The bodies of Habschied and Neugebauer were then found on a nearby fire trail on the 4th of November 1993, in shallow graves 50 meters 160 feet apart. Habschied had been decapitated, and despite an extensive search, her skull was never found. Neugebauer had been shot in the head 6 times. There was evidence that some of the victims did not die instantly from their injuries. One case involved a young Victorian couple from Frankston, Deborah Everest, 19, and James Gibson, 19, who had been missing since leaving Sydney for Confest near Albury on the 30th of December 1989. Another related to Simone Schmidl, 21, from Germany, who had been missing since leaving Sydney for Melbourne on the 20th of January 1991. Similarly, a German couple, Gabor Neugebauer, 21, and Anja Habschied, 20, had disappeared after leaving a King's Cross hostel for Mildura on the 26th of December 1991. Another involved missing British backpackers Caroline Clark, 21, and Joanne Walters, 22, who were last seen in King's Cross on the 18th of April 1992. The police examination of the remains showed evidence that some of the victims had been tortured. In response, on the 14th of October 1993, Task Force Air, containing more than 20 detectives and analysts, was set up by the New South Wales Police. On 5 November, the New South Wales government increased the reward in relation to the killings to $500,000 Australian dollars. After developing their profile of the killer, the police faced an enormous volume of data from numerous sources. Investigators applied link analysis technology and, as a result, the list of suspects was narrowed from a short list of 230 to an even shorter list of 32. Speculation arose that the crimes were the work of several killers, given that most of the victims had been attacked while as pairs, had been killed in different ways, and buried separately. On 13 November, police were contacted by Paul Onions, 24, in the United Kingdom. A few years earlier, on 25 January 1990, Onions had been backpacking in Australia and, while hitchhiking from Liverpool Station towards Mildura, had accepted a ride south out of Casula from a man known only as Bill, south of the town of Mittagong and less than 1 kilometer from Belanglo. Bill pulled out a revolver and some rope to rob Onions, at which point he managed to flee while Bill shot at him. Onions flagged down a passing motorist, Joanne Barry of Canberra, and together they described the assailant and his vehicle and registration number to the Bowral police. 13th April 1994, detectives refound the note regarding Onion's call. His statement was corroborated by Barry, along with the girlfriend of a man who worked with Milat. Police surveillance of the Milat house at Cinnabar Street in Eagle Vale commenced on the 26th of February 1994. Police soon learned that Milat had recently sold his silver Nissan Patrol shortly after the discovery of the bodies of Clark and Walters. Police also confirmed that Milat had not been working on any of the days of the attacks, and acquaintances also told police about Milat's obsession with weapons. When the connection between the Belanglo murders and Onion's experience was made, Onions flew to Australia to help with the investigation. On 5 May 1994, he positively identified Milat as the man who had picked him up and attempted to shoot him. Milat was arrested at his house on 22 May on robbery and weapons charges related to the Onions attack after 50 police officers surrounded the house. The search of the residence revealed various weapons, including a .22 caliber Anschutz Model 1441/42 rifle and parts of a .22 caliber Ruger 10-22 rifle that matched the type used in the murders, a Browning pistol, and a Bowie knife. Also uncovered were items belonging to several of the victims. Homes belonging to Milat's mother and 5 of his brothers were also searched, uncovering several more items belonging to victims. Milat appeared in court on the 23rd of May, but he did not enter a plea. On 31 May, he was additionally charged with the 7 backpacker murders. On the 28th of June, Milat sacked James Marsden, his family's lawyer, and sought legal aid to pay for his defense. Meanwhile, brothers Richard and Walter were tried in relation to weapons, drugs, and stolen items found on their properties. Committal hearing for Milat regarding the murders began on 24 October and lasted until 12 December, during which over 200 witnesses appeared. Based on the evidence, at the beginning of February 1995, Milat was remanded in custody until June that same year. Milat's trial opened at the Supreme Court of New South Wales in Sydney on the 26th of March 1996. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Milat is reported as having been confident he would be found innocent. In phone recordings made for the ABC's Australian Story program in 2004, Milat stated his grounds for believing he would be found innocent at trial. "My basic defense in my trial was that it wasn't me. I don't know who did it. It was up to them to prove my guilt, not for me to prove my innocence." His defense argued that, in spite of the evidence, there was no non-circumstantial proof Milat was guilty, and attempted to shift the blame to other members of his family, particularly Richard. 145 witnesses took the stand, including members of the Milat family who endeavored to provide alibis. On 18 June, Milat gave evidence himself. On the 27th of July, 1996, after 18 weeks of testimony, a jury found Milat guilty of the murders. He was given a life sentence on each count without the possibility of parole. He was also convicted of the attempted murder, false imprisonment, and robbery of Onions, for which he received 6 years' imprisonment each. On his first day at Maitland Jail, Milat was beaten by another inmate. Almost a year later, on the 16th of May, 1997, he made an escape attempt alongside convicted drug dealer and former Sydney councillor George Savas. The plan failed, and Savas was found hanged in his cell the next day. Milat was subsequently transferred to the maximum security section at Goulburn Correctional Centre. November 1997, Milat appealed against his convictions due to a breach of his common law right to legal representation. However, the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal dismissed the appeal. In 2004, Milat filed an application with the High Court of Australia that he be allowed special leave to appeal on new grounds. The application for leave was ultimately dismissed, affirming the Court of Criminal Appeal's decision to disallow his initial appeal. On 27 October 2005, in the New South Wales Supreme Court, Milat's final avenue of appeal was refused. In 2006, 2 other application attempts were rejected as well, as was one in November 2011. In 2001, Milat was transferred to one of the 45 new units at the High Risk Management Correction Centre, Supermax, at Goulburn Correctional Centre. In 2006, a toaster and television given to Milat in his cell caused a public outcry. In his 2004 interview on Australian Story, Milat denied that any of his family had been involved in the 7 murders. On 26 January 2009, Milat cut off his little finger with a plastic knife with the intention of mailing it to the High Court of Australia to force an appeal. He was taken to Goulburn Base Hospital under high security. However, on 27 January, Milat was returned to prison after doctors decided surgery was not possible. Milat had previously harmed himself in 2001 when he swallowed razor blades, staples, and other metal objects. In May 2011, he went on a 9-day hunger strike, losing 25 kilograms in an unsuccessful attempt to be given a PlayStation. In May 2019, Milat was transferred to the Prince of Wales Hospital, Randwick, and was subsequently diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. Following his treatment, he was transferred to the Long Bay Correctional Center to continue his custodial sentences. On 9 August 2019, a terminally ill, Milat was moved to a secure treatment unit located at the Prince of Wales Hospital following the loss of 20 kilograms in previous weeks. He was also exhibiting a high temperature. His status, however, was reported as not life-threatening. On 27 October 2019, Milat died from esophagus and stomach cancer at 4:07 a.m. within the hospital wing at Long Bay Correctional Center. He was 74 years old. Prior to his death, Milat wrote a letter to his family requesting that his funeral be paid for by the New South Wales government. The request was denied by New South Wales Corrections Minister Anthony Roberts. Instead, his body was cremated with the full reimbursement of costs to be paid from his prison account. In his final days, New South Wales police said in a statement that their officers visited Milat 8 times, in prison and in hospital, in an attempt to elicit a confession from him. However, Milat did not confess. Various strategies were deployed on each occasion, including different combinations of detectives and utilizing recorded interviews with victims' families as an investigative technique, the statement said. No further information was received or provided to police during the interactions. Although Milat died never having officially confessed, he is said to have previously admitted to his mother, with whom he had a close relationship, that he was responsible for the backpacker murders. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration gripping, please subscribe and share your thoughts with me. I would love to hear your ideas for future mysteries to uncover. Until next time, stay alert and remember, sometimes the truth is darker than fiction.